like sands through the hourglass over the days of the Florida Senate race. Hey, it's Matt Mitchell, editor of the Alachua County edition of RedCounty.com, and this is a new edition of Election Pulse Florida, where we break down the races that matter in 2010 for the state of Florida. And the race right now that everybody's talking about, at least in the Sunshine State, is the Florida Republican primary. Yesterday, a big development came on the way, and next Monday, we're going to be hearing the news we've all been waiting for. Just what is Chain Gang Charlie going to do? But yesterday, the news was that former State House Speaker and Miami lawyer Marco Rubio is going to stay in the race. He is going to run for the Florida Senate, no matter what happens over the next few days with Governor Charlie Crist, who is expected to make, or at least make the formality of declaring that he is running for Senate, rather than seek re-election to the governor's mansion in 2010. Right now, Charlie's feeling pretty confident. He's a pretty popular governor, or at least outside of Florida Republicans, and he doesn't seem too scared about what's going on with other candidates in the race. He was asked yesterday by a reporter about how he felt about Rubio's declaration to run against him, or at least possibly run against him, and he was just like, oh, okay. That's just how he is. He's very much his own man. He does what he feels is good for Charlie at any given time, and it appears that he and his staff have decided that running for Senate is the best way to go, or at least something he's more interested in. And sometimes being your own guy can come back to haunt you a little bit. Renowned political scientist Richard Fenno talked about election politics in his book Homestyle, where you have to depend on certain constituencies to get you to where you want to go. And in the case of Governor Crist, that constituency is Florida Republicans. You have to go through them in a closed primary state, and if you don't make them happy, or at least sufficiently happy to trust you, you do that at your own peril. Harlan Specter found this out in Pennsylvania very quickly, and Governor Crist has found this out as well over the past few years. He's remained popular statewide, but amongst Republicans, he's angered them quite a bit with things like voting rights for ex-felons, or accelerating their reenfranchisement, price control on homeowners insurance, his handling of Amendment 1 in 2008. In 2007, Republicans felt he wasn't going far enough or was too ham-handed, and that was where the animosity between him and Speaker Rubio first broke out. And that may inform a little bit of why Rubio is staying in the race. Maybe, maybe not. But now, over the past couple months, he has come out strongly in support of President Obama's stimulus package. He came out on stage at a town hall meeting in February in Fort Myers with President Obama, saying it's the greatest thing, it's what we need right now to get Florida back on track, and that sort of thing. And Florida Republicans are just really upset about that. When you see that more at the county level with RECs and outside of the party infrastructure as well, with single-issue activists saying that he's not the man we elected, we don't feel comfortable endorsing him, pushing our donors to give him money, and on and on and on. And Rubio is looking as a potentially viable alternative. And the nice thing about at least this primary, as opposed to, say, Pennsylvania's Republican and Democratic primaries, is that there are two candidates who can potentially go to general election voters in Florida and say, I can be the senator that this state needs for a very long time. Governor Crist is charismatic. He is a guy who knows how to network and build relationships and exploit relationships, to use a perfectly blunt term. That's how he got into politics, working with Connie Mack and working through his organization, and eventually becoming state senator, attorney general, and now governor. And Speaker Rubio, on the other hand, is a bit more, perhaps friendlier to the grassroots, but he's got appealing qualities that can, now that he is trying to portray himself as a conservative alternative, he also has qualities that appeal to general election voters, things like him being under 40 years old. He's a young minority Republican who's well-spoken, and he knows that he can at least sell himself as someone who knows how to get things done. He was Speaker of the Florida State House, for what that is worth. And those are qualities that can make, perhaps, Crist loyalists a little less uncomfortable with him being the party's nominee. and perhaps those sales pitches are going to be critical to Rubio as he challenges Governor Crist. But make no mistake about it, despite all the animosity towards Crist, he is still the front runner. The keys for him to winning are to keep doing what he normally does, be a very nice guy who connects well with people and raises a ton of money. And his wild card, in addition to those qualities that he already has, is the Republican Party of Florida. At the state level, out of Tallahassee and all the major branch offices, he has a very strong ally in the party's chairman, Jim Greer, who has chosen not to run for Congress as was promoted, so he's going to be focusing full-time on getting his friend to Capitol Hill if indeed he chooses to run, as he's expected to do next week. And so that organization can get strongly behind him, or either privately or publicly. And Jim Greer has made no bones about what he feels about Speaker Rubio's candidacy. He suggested a little while ago that Rubio is barking up the wrong tree, and that, at least privately, the RPOF organization will unite behind Crist, which makes but the wild card in Rubio's hand is at the lower levels of the party infrastructure and outside, where he can recruit activists who get involved in the community, and also the county REC chairs who can find local operatives who can help drive turnout for him. And ultimately, in a close primary, it's going to become an organizational battle. And the candidate who uses that organization in his organization in a close race to drive out support is going to win. It's not going to come down to ad buys or debates or anything like that. It's just how well the vote has gotten out for the other side. But that's too far away to show if it's going to be a close race. It could be a blowout for Crist. That is perfectly possible, and it could also be a blowout for Rubio if Crist continues to aggravate conservative Republican voters and they turn out. And obviously that's dependent on Rubio continuing to go on his message that I'm the conservative alternative and I can win and I can beat Charlie Crist, and that's what we need to do to be the party that we need to be, loyal opposition, yada yada yada. And that's ultimately going to be the challenge for Rubio, in addition to finding a way to somehow keep pace with the fundraising machine that is Charlie Crist. The guy knows how to call in favors, and he knows how to raise money, and money is all but everything in politics. And that's going to be a major challenge for Speaker Rubio, and we'll just see how the polls come out. We haven't seen any primary polling for a little bit. We've seen some indicators that Republicans aren't comfortable with Crist running for Senate. They prefer him to run for governor, generally speaking, but those numbers aren't insurmountable. And ultimately, in the most recent poll from about 3 or 4 weeks ago, Crist was still beating the living snot out of anyone in a Republican primary. But that may change. It's still a long way to go, and you can bet both Crist and Rubio's people are doing internal polls right now to see just what's going on, what Republicans are feeling, and how to go from there. So that's been our edition of Election Pulse Florida. I hope it was informative for you, and next week we're going to talk a little bit about the Democratic primary and touch on the Senate race a little more at large. But this is the big story this week. And it's going to be the big story next week, because it's expected that Governor Crist is going to make his announcement sooner rather than later. He doesn't want Speaker Rubio to own these news cycles and build up name recognition and all that. So it's going to be going at about a mile a minute, and we'll be right here following with it. So with Election Pulse Florida, this is Matt Mitchell, and hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.